to the Forever Classic Podcast, the show seeking enlightenment through video games, films, and other geek culture. I'm Alex McCumbers, and today we're going to talk with our pals. And speaking of pals, I've got the regulars here with me. Joe, how you doing, man? And then Mr. Zach.
Hello, hello.
Guys, it's going to be an interesting night tonight. We're going to talk about NPCs in video games, but we got a lot to catch up on, because some pretty major releases came out, and I think we'll get into that in ye old Geek and Peek. You laughing at Gina?
I'm laughing at Gina. Gina being like, I ain't listening to a third of this goddamn conversation.
Yeah, she, I forgot to just shut the door, but thankfully we live in a place now where me being in here making a ruckus
just like,
isn't that big of a deal.
You barely finished your second sentence and boom, door is closed.
To be fair, I haven't moved from this desk since I stopped working like 3 hours ago, so you know. But yeah, so we're here, we're making it happen. We've got that new Grand Electric Archive show going on, so look forward to another episode of that here soon. And the website's kicking, and we're pretty much ready for the summer season, I would say, when it comes to big releases and that sort of thing. So definitely keep an eye out.
Yeah, I feel like by the
stuff.
time people are listening to this, Game Summerfest may already be rolling.
Yeah, Summer Game Fest and all the subsequent random shows that have kind of spoked off from that.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. It's going to be really hard to keep up with, and I work in this stuff, so it's hard. We made a little guide. Marcus put one together. So if you're like, man, I don't even know what to watch or what's going on, hop over to our website. In the features section, there's a watching guide, which we normally don't do, but this is a weird circumstance. So Marcus is like, well, I can throw together something so people know what to look for. So check that out. That is available. And then hopefully we'll get some really cool announcements. I'm still really hoping we get to see something related to Bloodborne at this Sony thing coming out this week. So we'll see. A PC port, I think, would be perfect and small enough that, you know, it might not completely overtake whatever else they got going on, but should be a lot of really cool stuff in video games right now. And there's a lot of cool things that we're playing. But before we get to that, Zach, why don't you tell us where people can get a hold of us and how they might support us?
Well, as always, you can support us by donating directly through many of our sources. You can also donate directly to any of the authors that we have on the site. If you like some of their works, you can just support them directly with whatever their donation links are going to be. You know, those will vary from PayPal to Venmo to Ko-Fi to... I'm sure there's more, and I can't remember what they're called.
There's a bunch of them.
There's a bunch. And then you can support us, of course, by becoming a patron.
Mm-hmm. YouTube's, Twitch, those little follows and stuff really help us out.
Yeah, YouTube follows, subscribing. You know, we're aiming for that, getting to that 1,000 subscribers so that we can start doing some more work with our YouTube channel. Giving us any kind of follows on social media always help. That builds up lots of things. Like Alex's in particular's got over the 1,000 or whatever on Twitter, so that's enabled us to have the AC McCumbers is what we were using for
the Epic Creator tag. Mm-hmm.
That's it. Yep.
I assume that's still active and working. I don't see why it would have gotten turned off, but once we hit 1,000 on the Forever Classic Twitter and we can reapply and get that, we'll get something that's a little more like regular, normal.
Yeah, but any of those methods are fantastic and go a long way to help us and lets us have more flexibility to do more cool stuff for y'all.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, we've hit like 500,000 views on the YouTube, by the way, because of a couple videos that Reese put out that's mostly just like showing off some of the various details inside of games. And so we have a couple videos that hit like over 200,000. And so between those and some of the other fairly well-performing videos, we've hit 500,000. Now we're at, as of this recording.
I've got a comment on one of the videos that gets like 3 replies a day.
Oh, sure.
So now it's got like my comment, and the comment is something simple like, I think it's just Kirby is horror.
Oh, on
because it's on the Street
one.
Fighter Nintendo characters or whatever video, and it gets constantly up, like thumbed up, and then like a bunch of like, replies to it of just random comments of people reacting to my comment or just agreeing with me that Kirby in the video is horrible to look at.
I cannot wait for Street Fighter 6 to come out. We're very close to the release as of this recording, and I do believe that people are actively playing either on like the open beta or some other various methods.
Yeah, I feel like there
So
was something
soon.
this last weekend, open beta or something.
Yeah. So a
I don't
lot
know
of
how
people are
long that
going to
goes,
start
but-
getting their hands on it. I think we have a release date now, and we'll probably get some sort of update or something at the PlayStation Showcase because that's a big PlayStation partnership with them and Capcom. And
Yeah,
so
well-
fighting games are going to get really, really cool. Here pretty soon we're going to have another tournament that we're showing off on Twitch and or the YouTube. So keep it posted. We got some cool stuff in the works this summer.
Well, while they're getting their sneak peek, let's get on our geek peek.
Ooh, who's wanting to peek at some geeks first? Because, I mean, mine is probably fairly cross-pollinated, and maybe we'll end with
At least
that
with
one.
you and me. I don't know if Zach picked it up, but
Negative.
Alex and I can dig into it a little bit on his. I'll go first. Mine's I think going to be pretty quick, actually.
Mhm.
Saw Guardians of the Galaxy 3. It's pretty good. I liked it a lot.
Cool.
I was told to bring a box of tissues, and I was doing fine, doing dandy. Ain't no problems. I felt a couple of twings and tangs throughout there that made me want to, let loose some tears. And then there was one line, and I lost it.
Mm-mm.
Like right at the end of the movie. And like I can see, and I don't think it's a moment in the movie where most people cry. I think it's a moment like where most people cry is other parts of the film that are just as like heart-wrenching and stuff, but it's a line like specifically related to fatherhood.
Oh,
And as a
gotcha.
dad, it hit me in a very particular way, and I just lost it. Some pretty great action stuff. I like what they did with the Adam Warlock character. The villain is one of the most despicable villains in the MCU, I think. Like, he is just grotesque in his mindset.
Do we know that character, or is that spoiler territory to even say who it is?
This is his first appearance, I think, in the MCU. So,
Okay.
but if you've watched a trailer or whatever, you sort of get an idea that it's related to Rocket's background.
Gotcha.
So it's like kind of central theming around all that. But one of the things I've liked about the movie being out is the actor of the villain has been like, I have no excuses for this guy. Like, you should hate him. He's horrible. He's a horrible person. I'm just a regular dude who was hired to play that dude. But that guy sucks. And I'm
Heck
like,
this guy.
yeah. Sometimes it's nice to just have a straightforward, like, bad guy. Like, that guy
Yeah.
sucks.
Right.
Like, I remember like the big thing with Infinity War and Endgame is people were like, Thanos isn't wrong. Like there was that like it
Mm-hmm.
like Infinity War is a movie about Thanos. It's not about the Avengers, it's a movie about Thanos. And because of that, you ended up with people sympathizing with his stance.
Right.
I don't think there's any sympathizing with this guy's stance. It is straight up just like cruelty and like arrogance and just like in the name of progress type of mindset, and the ends justify the means at all costs or whatever. But yeah, I won't dig too much into it. I think what they did with a lot of the characters, I think one of the more interesting interactions is, we have the time travel version of Gamora.
Oh, right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's a big part of it all. And so I really like what they did with that. And, Peter Quill, Star-Lord's grief surrounding all of that and how it's impacting his relationship with the rest of the Guardians. It's good shit. I recommend it.
Would you
while
say
I
it's
haven't-
better than Quantum Mania? Because I watched it like yesterday.
I would say it's better than Quantumania.
Okay, cool.
Like this is coming from someone who I have not disliked a Marvel movie in like a long time.
Mhm.
Like I liked the Eternals. I liked Shang-Chi.
Sure.
I liked Black Panther 2. I liked Quantumania. I walked out of the movie going, that was a fun time. That was a good time. But this one I walked out and like, all right, out of all of the like MCU trilogies, this is probably my favorite one. It's a solid story. 1, 2, 3, you can tell James Gunn had it pretty well planned from the beginning what he wanted these characters to go through. I'm sure it changed throughout time, and of course studio executives having opinions on how things should be. I'm sure he probably had to fight, and now he works for DC, but
Right.
it definitely has the most overall cohesive story arc of the characters through all 3 movies. And I think some of it comes down to, again, the same director through all 3 movies.
Mhm.
Who knows what's going to happen with these characters now that James Gunn is no longer involved with the MCU. But, the fact that we got 3 movies and a holiday special out of them,
That
pretty good
holiday
time.
special is so funny. Do they do that thing at the end of the movie where it's like Guardians will return or whatever?
I'm not going to say anything.
Okay.
Well,
Marvel continues being cool.
it's
Yeah,
true.
It was a good time. I liked it.
And I got another good shout out from my buddy Austin, who was
Oh, yeah.
Randy in Loki, that version of his changeling. He was Groot in this.
Like a body double?
He was the motion capture for Groot.
That's what I meant.
That's super cool.
Yeah. I was really excited.
It's not called motion capture anymore. It's got a new term.
Really?
I cannot remember what it is.
Like motion acting or something?
It's
because
I just read it in a book, but motion capture is sort of the outdated term for it now.
Yeah.
Because it's also capturing. Maybe his was motion capture, but there's like for what they did with performance capture is the new industry term for it. So
right on.
But I think for his case, it probably was just motion capture because he's not the one saying I am Groot.
No, that should be Vin Diesel still.
Yeah. But for like a lot of video games, particularly like I think the Naughty Dog titles are probably the biggest example of this off the top of my head. They use performance capture because it is driven by the performance. The voice actor is the performance, not just a motion capturing the motion of a character. It is the full thing.
A lot of AAA titles utilize that. Like Death Stranding did that. Most of the like big budget PS4, PS5 titles do that. So it's fascinating to see that like come together in a lot of different forms.
Well, in the Avatar movies too.
Yeah, so from Guardians of the Galaxy to Guardians of the Galaxy in a different area, Zach, tell us about the Guardian games.
Oh yeah, today's the last day. Since we're recording, it's the very last day of the season of Defiance, and B, Guardian Games, which is just basically Destiny's Olympic Games each year.
Mm-hmm.
So those are fun. So each year you like not as a team, but kind of as a team, you battle it out across a bunch of activities all week, which are basically just variants of the normal ones that you would do. But so as your Titan, Hunter, and Warlock, you earn points for your class, and at the end of each day, somebody wins the day, and at the end of each week, somebody wins the week, and at the end of the whole games, somebody wins the entire games. And then for the next year, they have this special statue that has like the I don't know what kind of bird it is. It's either like a buzzard or like a hawk.
Oh, okay.
For the Warlocks, the Hunters have a snake and the Titans have a lion. And it's just basically a plain white like statue, like on a pedestal. But the class that won for the year's Avatar thing stays the collar for their class, and the rest stay white.
Very cool. Is there like a bonus or something if say you're a Guardian, or not Guardian, Titans win? Is there like a special item or something the Titans can pick up?
I want to say they did something interesting in the original Destiny with it, but I might be getting all my time frames wrong because it's been years. But they have, like Guardian game specific stuff. They have some stuff that you can buy, like the cosmetic outfits with either like their silver, which is the in-game real money currency, or the bright dust you earn from like doing things and challenges for free. So like each year they've had basically a different outfit. So this year's looked like they used to have something called the Sparrow Racing League, which was just their version of racing on the little like flying cars. And it was really fun.
Yeah.
But the armor this year, like the cosmetics, looked a lot like that. So they usually have distinct like glows and different stuff to them that just let you spice stuff up for your armor.
Oh, very cool.
That's most
some of the promotional imagery of this definitely has that Olympic style vibe where it's like a big celebratory competition.
Oh, it is. Everything's red, yellow, and blue, and white, just everywhere. It's very, very Olympics feeling. And this is the first year they did PvP with a lot of it.
Okay.
So they had it before because you could earn stuff through that, because that's an avenue that they want players to be able to play in. But this year they added a specific one where when you played in that game mode, you only played with a team full of your class. So it was a team full of Titans versus a team full of like Warlocks, or Hunters versus Warlocks, or Titans versus Hunters.
That could get messy quick.
Oh, yeah. it really, really got messy very fast. But it was just cool. It was a fun time. We're rounding it out, finishing up our champ title, and that'll give us our Reveler titles. So
quick check-in with you. I know that the latest expansion came out in February.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you feel like Destiny has done with like as a live service game, keeping up with like stuff coming out and engaging its player base?
I think they're doing good because they do updates each week. And with their This Week at Bungie or whatever they call it now, they're really cool about being like, hey, this is what we got going on. And now they're like, hey, this is what we talked about last week. This is what we're talking about this week. And this is what we'll talk about next week. Each week when you go through at the beginning of their like article blog. But it kind of breaks down what's going on. So they had a big mid-season patch that did a lot of like rebalancing for the sandbox and like gun setup and like perk setup. And going into Season of the Deep, they're like, hey, this is what's going to happen after we go through the initial like week of season launch. Then we'll go into these updates next. So
it sounds like you're having a ton of fun with everything. And this is what you're doing now. That's an annual event?
Yes, so it won't come around till next year.
And you've participated in it before?
I've participated in all but one of them, just because the 1 year we weren't playing like anything, and outside of that, we've played all of them so far.
Was that the year you moved into your house and had a buttload of projects?
Maybe. I don't remember.
It was a traumatizing time. I don't remember.
It was, because I mean, we've checked in for all of them, even if it was just briefly, like came in, because it's a free event. You don't have to have anything special to play it. But, the cosmetics you can, of course, always buy with the in-game earned currency. So we popped in to be like, oh, hey, well, we're not going to get to play it. But, what's the cool outfit for this year?
That's sweet.
Yeah, because they did that for Halloween and for Christmas, which is their dawning. And there's something they do else. And I can't remember what it was.
Well, it seems like the biggest endorsement and praise that someone can say about a game that's been out as long as Destiny 2 is that within a few months of their latest expansion or big content drop, that players are having fun, right? Yeah. Like that should be the goal for something like this. And every time you talk about Destiny, you're like stoked about it, and to the point that you built 2 computers in the last month or so that you and your significant other can play together on better rigs.
Yeah, I mean, I was due for an upgrade. We'd been putting off getting hers for a long time, but since it was coming, we didn't want to buy the other thing, and it all worked out great to be like, yes. So our final kick was the Destiny expansion.
Yeah, very cool. I love getting updates from you because it's definitely a side of gaming I almost never touch, which is multiplayer online. Anything. But particularly like I've played so little like MMOs or shooters just in general. My experience with World of Warcraft was back in like 2009 for like a month and a half. I think I got into Guild Wars. I think I got into Guild Wars 2 for like maybe 8 or 9 months with a couple of friends, where we just did a bunch of quests together. But it's just interesting to hear how gaming has changed and evolved in that landscape, in that side of things, and what is keeping players engaged, particularly with this idea of a live service game and things like Fortnite changing what that means.
Mm-hmm. Man, Fortnite's a fucking monster about change.
It's so cool, but also annoys the heck out of me, because every time I turn around, it's different, which, neato, great. But then, like, where did the rest of that stuff go? And the answer is they just removed it.
But I think that sort of, in some ways, can even the playing field, right? You can jump in at any time because someone hasn't spent 400 hours mastering the Spider-Man mechanic.
That's a very good point. Unlike something like a Street Fighter or whatever, where it pretty much stays the same for a long time. So your players who got in like now are usually going to be the better players generally.
But it's just an interesting side of it that I don't explore much, and outside of updates from Zach, I don't hear about it.
Yeah, same. I'm glad that we have this perspective on this show because I don't do this either.
Right. Yeah, we enjoy, because we know it's hard to get out and make time for things. So multiplayer games are our way of being like buddies off in the distance.
My
All right,
gaming
Alex.
time is like me alone in a sweaty mess, eating snacks,
Your
which is what
existence.
I've done pretty much all day yesterday because I've been playing the new Zelda. Legend
Give
of
us that
Zelda
geek peek.
Tears of the Kingdom is out,
Oh my goodness.
and it's different.
It's so good.
It is in a lot of ways, and in other ways, it annoys the hell out of me. I spent probably an hour on a shrine last night, just trying to figure out how to line my pieces together to sit on a rail, and I tried all these different variations and attempts and this and that, and I knew what I wanted to make. I just couldn't get the game's physics system and how you manipulate objects to cooperate with me. So I'd like attach it here, it'd fall over, and I'd be like, damn it. And so like my whole strategy right now is I build things upside down. So I lay it flat, I put the wheels on top, and then when I'm done with like whatever I'm building, I just flip it over.
That's very, very smart. That's super smart.
And
It does
so
help
many
you line
things I've come
up
across
easier.
can be solved with just make it long.
Long log.
Yep. I had so many instances where the game was like trying to get me to use like balloons to lift stuff up. These balloons never worked. And so what I did is I made it long enough that I could jump up to an upper platform, grab it from the top, and then hoist it to where I needed it to be. It was the most ridiculous, bizarre, like puzzle solving method. And I'm like, this is not the intention at all. But this is the only way I can get this game to cooperate with me because things are just squirrely. Usually it works. Where I don't like it is when you're in confined spaces. I just did the desert dungeon area and got to the boss and got my shit wrecked. So I'll come back to him later. But when the game's confined, I think it's worse. But generally, like being able to manipulate things with the new powers, all that feels really cool. The controls are fiddly, but the original Zelda was fiddly. So generally, if you like Breath of the Wild, you'll probably like this one.
The sheer number of systems they've put into the game that weren't present before that just work together.
Yeah, from a coding perspective, it all works.
It is.
Now,
like,
does it make the game better? That depends.
I think that the new systems fixed everything I disliked about Breath of the Wild. Like the weapon breaking system, the fact that I can just build new weapons on the fly,
that's really
fixes
cool,
my problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of my big things was I have this thing and it's gonna break halfway through this fight. It doesn't matter if it breaks halfway through this fight because someone else dropped something. I can pick it up again and quickly attach like a ruby to it, and now it's like a fire sword or some nonsense.
The amazing thing is every single item seems to have more utility, and there's multiple ways to use said things. One of my favorite things starting out was I would just attach an opal to an arrow and launch it into a group of things I couldn't kill, and it would like lightning or use an elemental blast and just kill the whole area. And I'm like, this is great. But if something winks at me funny, I die immediately. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't like the fact that I'm still running into guys. I have a decent number of like hearts now, and I'm still running into guys that hit me once with a stick, and I'm just dead. I'm like, what the heck? Like my stick isn't that strong.
Do you have updated armor and stuff too? Because I think that the game is trying to like push us into the buff system with the cooking, which is cool, but like,
no, I've gotten a decent amount of armor, and I've upgraded some of it already.
Also, when you're starting out, if you're playing Tears of the Kingdom now and you're like, man, this is fine, but just follow the main quest line for like a while, because you get the paraglider out of it, you get the camera, you get access to an area that is like not revealed in the advertisement, and so following that main quest line for a little while is very highly recommended.
Yeah, I've been wandering all around. My two biggest complaints, or I guess probably my biggest complaint, is when you finish a shrine. And I told you this off pod, but you finish a shrine and there's a cutscene of them thanking you and commending you for your efforts or whatever. Then you get the reward screen where you accept the reward, and then there's another cutscene where they thank you again. And I'm like,
it's always the same for every single shrine. Yep,
it's the same every time, and they're weirdly long. And there's two of them, and they're both weirdly long. And I'm like, just make both cutscenes back to back then. So you can skip them, which is the good news. But I should only have to skip one cutscene, get my reward screen, and then I'm shot out of the shrine. Yeah. And then the other one is just like a writing thing where I was
Mhm.
talking to a guy to get to a place, and he's like, "Oh man, if only I was stronger. We used to like eat these mushrooms found at the caves at the bottom of the hill." The fact that he mentioned mushrooms, I thought, "Oh, I'm supposed to find some mushrooms and bring them to this guy so that he can open this door for me." I spent way too long looking for mushrooms in the cave directly underneath where I was supposed to be. And then it occurred to me, oh, maybe I should try the ascend ability.
Mhm.
And that was the solution. I'm like, they should have never mentioned mushrooms because I spent so much time
Yep.
looking for mushrooms for that guy.
Oftentimes the solution is like weirdly not obvious for a lot of things because you have so many options. Early on, my biggest complaint was I walked into a dungeon or a shrine that I just couldn't do because you needed the paraglider to solve it. And the game didn't tell me that upon entering. It didn't warn me in any regards. I just came across a scenario where I couldn't do it. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess this isn't going to work. Granted, now that I'm thinking about it, it may have worked, but I still don't think it was possible without the paraglider. Because you basically have to, like, catapult yourself across a chasm. And I'm near certain that it's too short of a distance to get, like, just straight.
You have to make it longer.
Yeah.
I did that one last night.
It's a weird situation just generally, but yeah, the game is fine. I kind of wish it was a little better in some aspects, but I mean it's more Zelda, and the story, like the way that they set up this world, the lore behind everything going on, the way the Hylians and the other races and stuff interplay into all these different stories and stuff is really cool. And I like the fact that it's a little scary. Like there's some horror elements in this.
You like find new areas that weren't like a part of Breath of the Wild that are, you're like, ooh, I don't know if I want to be here right now. This is kind of spooky. It's fun seeing the progression of Hyrule. Yeah. So you sort of have the Breath of the Wild where it's this like apocalypse kind of scenario where all of your friends are dead.
Right.
And you're coming out, you by a miracle, you wake up 100 years later and you're just trying to finish the job. Everyone's miserable. The world is desolate. There's these laser shooting robots all over the place, killing people and like everything's super ominous. In this game, there's like a sense of hope as people are like rebuilding. Literally. There's like a couple of new towns and expansions, and there's building materials all over the place as a rebuilding effort as people are trying to rebuild Hyrule. And like there's almost a different attitude about it. People are like, characters that were separated in the Breath of the Wild are now working together on projects to try and get stuff done, and it's really cool to see.
That is
the major thing I've run into is the game is just kind of frustrating for no particular reason in a lot of areas. Like you can't remap your buttons. I don't know why Nintendo keeps doing this. Like I can't just change where my sprint toggle is.
That one I think you can change that
button.
One.
You can switch it, but you can't change it. You can just
switching
jump.
Is changing.
It's not good enough.
You can't map it, but you can change it.
You might be able to map it within the Switch's system, but I haven't tried that, and it shouldn't be that hard.
It's not going to update your remapping in the game, though. It's still going to tell you to press X.
It'll still tell you to press X.
And even if you have X remapped to B, you're going to look at your controller and hit X, and it's going to be the wrong thing.
Right. So that is a fault. Just straight up fault. This game's not very like accessible in my
when you have
at
all the efforts that Sony has been putting into all of their exclusives with God of War and like The Last of Us and
every major release they've had within the last like 3 or 4 years.
They're getting celebrated by their accessibility options. And then you got Nintendo that are like, I think when Breath of the Wild came out, they were even interviewed about their lack of accessibility and button remapping. They're like, oh, I guess we didn't. Their reasoning was they never even really considered it. Well, you were interviewed about it. It's pretty present in the current landscape of gaming of accessibility, and now your sequel to that game comes out, and you still clearly didn't consider it.
There's no excuse anymore for Nintendo. They're a multi-billion-dollar company. They're constantly like making money hand over fist. They have brilliant people all across their entire like franchise and studios and stuff. Like, if we are mad about not being able to remap buttons in any game and a lack of accessibility options, we should be equally as mad at people like Nintendo. They're not perfect. They screw up just as much as other studios do. And there's a lot of times where we're like, yeah, but Zelda's still fun. you should still criticize it in these
Yeah.
regards.
If
though.
it's a question of like resources, like a small indie
Mhm.
team just doesn't have
That's
the
different,
resources
yeah.
to build in accessibility options. I get that. I understand that. But there's a lot of small indie teams that are still pursuing it anyway, even with their limited options. And Nintendo is up. I would, of course, rank them up there with titles like God of War and things like that. They
Oh, of
have the
course.
resources to invest in this type of thing, and they just simply don't. And I don't
Mhm.
know if it's, I mean, I guess Sony's a Japanese company, right? But I feel like a lot of their studios are Western based or targeting a Western audience right now.
I think that within, and I don't know if we'll see it in our lifetime, but once the old guard is kind of like done and dusted at Nintendo, we'll see a huge paradigm shift in how they just operate, I think.
Yeah.
And so it'll be another 10, 15 years before we even see the sparks of that change. But I think it is coming. And so it doesn't really help us in the here and now. If you want to remap your buttons, I think there's ways to play Zelda offside the Switch.
Well, there's
So
third party
have fun.
controllers too that you can just
Yeah.
remap things to. So
Yeah.
if you're willing to spend the time to do it, but again, the people who really need those accessibility options probably are struggling to remap, like to go through that extra mile where they have to remap the buttons and then learn and fight what the game is telling them to do.
Yep.
Rather than having it built in, it just adds more inaccessibility to an already inaccessible game for certain people, and that's unfortunate.
Generally, Zelda is a finicky controlling game. Like, it just is. There are so many times where I'm opening a menu and I'm like, oh, right, I need to open a different menu. Or it's the same menu under a different subset of menus just to be able to throw something. Like, there's so many random things about this game that doesn't make any damn sense. And so it's weird, man.
It's gotten better for me, and I think in some ways I may have a slight advantage with a lot of my 3D modeling background.
Sure.
Where I just know how to manipulate things in 3D space and attach them together and things like that stuff makes sense to me.
But I'm talking about just opening menus with the various
right.
buttons. Like you switch weapons and switch bows with the same, but you have to be holding a bow. But if you're
the number of times
holding
I've
a bow,
wanted to
it'll pull up the bows instead of your swords. Like there's so many weird little nuanced things that just should have been streamlined, I think. And it just goes to show that while this is a game that improves Breath of the Wild and the fact that it just allows you to do more, it doesn't necessarily improve Breath of the Wild from a systems and mechanics perspective. It just adds to it. It doesn't fix anything. It just staples on new shit, and it's like, here you go.
Well, this isn't a Tears of the Kingdom episode, but my last point is, if you had told me even a few months ago that, hey, there's this game coming out, you can just, slap shit together, you can take a weapon and attach it to another weapon on the fly, it's got, you can take fans and attach them to a glider and just make an airplane, and then you can attach fans to logs and make an attack helicopter if you want. You can attach a rocket to a board and make a dude out of it with a fire penis that explodes. And I've been like, that game sounds crazy awesome. What's it on? It's the Switch.
Yep.
I would not have believed you. But Nintendo packed all of this into that hardware, which goes to show you
Mythic
that
Quest, the TTP, the time to penis, is very low in this game. Players immediately were making ding dongs.
Yeah, it was like if Link went to Burning Man and it's just this man with a giant dong flaming, and then the
People
balls
are doing
explode.
awful things to Koroks. The social media side of Tears of the Kingdom is very fun if you have the game or not. It's just funny. That's my thesis on it. Is Zelda is funny. So yeah, it's fine. I'll play more of it. But Zelda is Zelda.
I think the funniest thing I saw was somebody take a Korok and put him onto a 3-stage rocket.
Mm-hmm.
They shot it up and they jumped up and blew up the second part, so they were emulating thruster, whole section disconnects as it was just skyrocketing.
That's incredible.
That's pretty cool. But Tears of the Kingdom motivated me to do something I haven't done in a really long time, which is I just took a day and played a video game.
Mm-hmm.
I was just having fun. I ate junk. I went to the Mario movie, ate junk food, and played Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom for a day.
Yep.
And I haven't done that in a long time, and the fun has not stopped for me, because one of my favorite things about Breath of the Wild was the exploration.
Mm-hmm.
And they were constantly interrupting my exploration with bad combat and weapon breaking.
Mm-hmm.
And with those issues fixed and the new abilities enhancing the exploration, it's just better for me personally.
You just get more options.
I just need to remember that the ascend ability exist because I'll be
Right.
like, oh, how am I gonna get up there?
Gina started playing this, and she's like, "Why don't you use Ascend?" And I'm like, "Good point." But the other cool thing about Zelda is there's a lot of new characters to talk to, and they're all pretty interesting. And the NPCs, let's talk about them.
Yeah, that does bring us to tonight's topic, or this episode's topic, which is our favorite non-player characters. And I think there's a pretty broad definition here of what that means. So there's going to be a range here, but I think it's good to talk about NPCs and their role in video games, what makes a good NPC, and then of course some of our favorites. So I guess I'll throw it to you, Zach. What makes an NPC stand out for you? Like, what do you look for in an NPC?
So for me, I look for like some stuff that stands out, and like something about this person, this being, just like throws a hook in and just keeps on keeping on. Like not just like a one-off. Like a one-off person I'm gonna forget in, an hour more into the game. Just be like, they didn't fucking exist. But you get into so like I'll use one that I really like and is really fucking weird is Ati from Control, the like paracausal janitor.
Yeah.
Oh.
He's fucking weird, but he's really cool. He's like always, he's trying to help you, but he's always talking shit to you and making you work for him as his underling.
Yeah, he'll show up and be like, "Hey, how's it going?" And you're like, "I'm trying to do this thing," and he's like, "Well, that's fun," and then just like wanders off.
Kinda. And then
I
sometimes he comes in and he's like,
is
"Hey,
not the first time it's come up in conversation. People like Control, huh?
It's a good
I
game.
really like Control because the DLC has Alan Wake, and I fucking loved Alan Wake. Because it's all part of this like connected universe.
Yeah.
So like Control's like the Nexus, like takes place in like the Bureau. And that's kind of like this.
I
like,
would say
Nexus.
play this with Gina because it's all like paranormal
X-Filesies and
activity.
stuff. Yep.
Like you're in like basically a supernatural investigations like version Pentagon type building, and so you're investigating what's happening inside of this paranormal place. It's got some really great like presentation and gameplay and storytelling that's environmentally based, and like
next time this goes on sale, I think I'll pick it up because we just finished Jedi Survivor, and she's going through and doing a lot of the 100% content.
Oh yeah, I think you'd really like it because it's fun to 100% too. I'm almost done with it. I just didn't quite finish.
Okay.
It's like if you combined X-Files with Mindhunters.
Okay.
And Star Wars,
which she loves. So we'll make that pitch to her at some point, and maybe that'll be our next weekend project.
There you go.
I mean, I guess technically you could throw in like some supernatural like element.
Oh yeah.
Because you're constantly hunting down these items that do different shit, and you're having to like play with them or like force them to submit or just like have tea time and like weird stuff. Like, but they all have like their own like deep lore, which makes it much more fun because each thing you get to read like the dossiers on.
Yeah.
Oh sure.
But what makes Adi stand out to you in terms of an NPC that makes you want to mention?
Well, Adi's, because the first time you meet him, because you meet him really early, he's just a janitor as you're walking in the building, and then later on you realize this janitor can get me in all these places that are absolutely like paracausal stuff going on, and he should not be able to do that. So it kind of starts being like, okay, so he's probably got something going on, and he's either a good guy or a bad guy. And then like as the story develops, you kind of realize it's like, no, Adi's just doing his own thing. He's helping me out because I'm listening to what the fuck he's telling me to do. Cool. Everything else in this place could fucking kill me, and probably this janitor too. But then he just says such funny shit. He's got a fun little accent, and he's like kind of crotchety, and like at some point or another, like you find him from vacation. It's trippy. He's just a trip. The whole game's a trip, but he like makes this fun little relief from the doom and gloom.
Sure.
But he still gives that like little bit of stressor of like he could be super like scary, but he's just Adi. He's
sort
just
of a Tom Bombadil.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Tom Bombadil's a good way to put it.
Huh.
Yeah, he's helpful. He's not really there to hinder you, but he's maybe don't want to poke him.
Yeah. So for me, I find a thread that makes me appreciate an NPC maybe more than other NPCs is some sort of rivalry between the main character or the player character and the NPC.
Oh,
And
sure, like how Gary or Blue or whatever in
right.
Pokemon.
And you can name them like your dickhole little brother if you wanted to, and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna kick the shit out of it." Like, there's some fun there to be had. But like, if you've played the Yakuza games, you immediately meet a character named Majima, and this character is bonkers.
Which, to be fair, he is playable, I think, in one of them. I think.
Yeah, in Yakuza 0, you play as him. But in the Yakuza series as a whole, not so much. Like, you play Kiryu is arguably the main character, and Majima is the sort of like opposite of Kiryu. Kiryu is like the stoic, like good guy here, like typical Japanese hero of serious, gonna like take control of the situation and do the right thing at the right time and like be honorable. Not that Majima is dishonorable, but he is willing to maybe break the rules a little bit to get the same job done. But he sees Kiryu as a worthy opponent. And so you'll just be running around and suddenly Majima will come out of an alley and just attack you, and you've got to like fight him. And he's like, where Kiryu kind of has this like serious, deeper tone to his voice. Majima is like, and he's sort of got this sort of Joker vibe to him, but there's also sort of a mutual respect. Like, Majima doesn't want to kill Kiryu if he doesn't have to. He wants Kiryu alive so they can continue to improve each other. But he has a sense of humor, or a source of humor and challenge in the Yakuza series, or at least the main numbered games for most of the series, because he's trying to remember if he's present in Like a Dragon or not, but I don't think he is. If he is, it's a minor part, not like with the main series 1 through 6 games.
So I would argue that the most interesting NPCs in video games are those who, the more time you spend with them, the more you want to know about them. And I think that, and I specifically wanted to pick this list not including like party members in RPGs or characters who might be playable and other things, but these are really like background, they're very a part of the game, but they're not necessarily like a gameplay element, so to speak. So the merchant from Resident Evil 4, I think, is probably the most interesting way you can make a shopkeeper, and it's something that was emulated in a lot of different titles, including like the Messenger and stuff to an extreme degree,
or even the new God of War games.
Yes,
with the Dwarf Brothers.
And the various, blacksmiths and stuff you meet throughout that adventure. But I think that just a character that you see who has a really distinct feel, and the merchant works because he's so different compared to all the other characters. But you're always like, I don't know what that guy's deal is.
What are
you never quite know, but he's always there, and he's always doing like weird little things, and so you're like, is there anything else I can learn about this guy? And depending on the game, there's supplemental quests you can do and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's where I think From Software it does exceptionally well.
Yeah. Well, considering I've only played Resident Evil 4 like twice, but the Resident Evil 4 merchant is one of my most quoted characters of all time.
Yep.
Just the simplicity of, what are you buying?
It's just,
what are you
it's
selling?
so fun.
And
it's memorable and cool. And
yeah, it's a cool, very cool character, and the fact that you can like be like, ugh, and kill him, and then you just don't have a shopkeep for the rest of the game is an interesting mechanic.
Yeah, so I really like those sort of characters that at first glance you're like, oh, he seems pretty cool, and then over time you like get new information. Sigurd of Katarina in Dark Souls 3, he's like the onion guy, right? You can buy an Nendoroid of this dude. I love this guy. He's hilarious and weird, and he's the perfect little like From Software weird guy, and I like those characters a lot. There's several characters in Elden Ring. Millennia, the one who comes in at the campfire. I think that's her name. They all kind of sound the same in Elden Ring. But she's really cool. A lot of the Fire Shrine Keepers in Dark Souls are really interesting. The doll in Bloodborne. From Software has a way of establishing a character archetype and then giving you little pieces of their story it's just you just want to know everything about them. It's so cool.
Yeah, and to continue that point, for me, I think Mass Effect does a really great job with it because they have quests surrounding each character,
Right.
like kind of encouraging you to spend time specifically with each character over time and have those interactions. And a standout for me is Garrus, because he's the character that you have like the most history with as a like in the world and in the story of Mass Effect, and you have specific quests, and you know you've you know he's the guy you've been in the shit with
right
before the events of the game. He's the one that you sort of connected with even beforehand. He's your best friend, and you spend time, even more time with him throughout the game, one-on-one, doing quests, or even he's like, I don't know if I want to go in on this one, dude, but I'll go with you if you want me. Those like little interactions. Kudos to the writers for making such an array of characters that you all kind of love and all want to spend more time with, but you also don't have to if for some reason you don't particularly like a character.
Right.
But the more time you invest, the more you're rewarded. And on it, similar to that, I think the Persona games do that. They reward choosing to spend time with characters greatly. And for me in Persona 4, that'd be Chie, this cool martial arts girl who's just wants to protect her friends. And the more time you spend with her, the more you kind of find out that, you find out more about her insecurities and whether or not she's actually doing a good job of protecting her friends and what she might need to change to do that.
Right.
It's when you invest that time that you start to see those characters' flaws, and that's what makes them more interesting to me.
I think that any game that rewards you spending time with characters is definitely like some of the better NPCs usually in these things.
And it's such a daunting thing to think about from a writing perspective. You see the like scripts for some of these video games, and it's just like there are some players who will never see 1,000 pages of that script because they chose not to pursue that character or quest line.
Right.
True. On the note of like interacting with characters, it's one of the things I really liked about like the characters Hornet and Coral in Hollow Knight. Hornet you have to interact with because she's part of the main quest line. So as you continue the game, you interact with her and you get more and more of this like history and like why this, why that, up until like the end where you can have like multiple different things happen. But then there's Coral, who you have to at least interact with like once to progress some boss fight stuff. But the more you explore, you find Coral just kind of chilling in places, talking about like life and how things are, and like, things are kind of dangerous down here. You might want to upgrade your weapon a little bit or something. But like, like when you get to like the City of Tears, he's just chilling on the rest bench. Like, yeah, man, like I like hanging out here. It's really nice to see the rain against the glass. It's just, it's just pretty to see.
I need to spend more time in that game. I just picked up a couple like cheapo Switch releases, and I found a copy of Hollow Knight while I was in Joe's neck of the woods, actually, that Best Buy we used to go to all the time. So I have a physical copy now. I already own the game, but like that's a special game. I can't wait for the sequel.
Yeah, no, it got delayed, but we figured that was coming. But they also mentioned that they kind of got a little bigger than they meant again.
Right, which is totally fine from this. Like, whatever, you guys do you. It's fine. And
yeah, I know.
That's a testament to this like world and character writing that they've been doing, aside from the cool gameplay stuff.
Well, yeah, if it just meets the same level of Hollow Knight, I'm gonna be fucking thrilled. It doesn't. I don't need a bar higher than that. Like that is an exemplary bar for me. And if they just hit the same thing, like I'm fine. Fucking give me new story and the same shit. Like,
yeah, it was interesting because you think about some of these indie projects and the love and care that they put into their NPCs, and like giving the NPCs themselves story arcs that can be pursued and followed. And you've got games like Hollow Knight, but like Shovel Knight, I was like, oh man, there's so many great characters. But they took my favorite ones and then made them playable in like expansions. And so I was like, oh, well, maybe they're not the greatest example of NPCs when they become playable characters in their own versions of the game.
But on the other hand, that's a great NPC, right?
Fair enough. Like people loved this character enough that they made it playable. But and I originally deleted my pick from this game from my list because my list was like twice as long as it is now. But Zach, I see that you added a character from Hades.
Yeah,
And Hades has so many great NPCs that part of the drive for me in that game where other roguelikes didn't grab me was I wanted to pursue other characters' story, not just my character's story.
Yeah.
And as you progress through runs, you meet other characters or interact with them, and when you come back, you can ask them questions or interact with them. And depending on success or failure or number of times, interactions with all these different characters changes. You can do 50 to 100 runs and still be running into new dialogue with characters. It's kind of insane, and it's all like I want to interact with all of them. I'm never like, I'll skip this character. I'm like, sure. I have to make sure I don't miss anybody because I want to know what's going on with them. It kind of helps that pretty much every character in Hades is hot. Like the art in the game, even though it's not animated, it's all voice acted, but just the art that comes up when the character's speaking, you're just like, oh, hello.
Now you say that, but I googled this Dusa that's on Black's
Yeah,
Dusa's, but Dusa's
it's just a head.
Yeah, Medusa's cute though. You're like, oh, it's an adorable little Medusa head. Like, there's still an appeal to every character, and it's really, really cool. But
I think that fun.
Why'd you pick Medusa specifically?
Because she's so funny. Like,
okay.
Because she, I mean, it comes off that she's like really adores Zagreus and might like kind of love him, but she's just this super shy and awkward fucking maid. Because she's just a Medusa head from like Castlevania, like, you know, the flying Medusa head.
Oh, sure.
That's what she is. But she has the little feather duster and just cleans stuff. And of course, Hades is big ass and grumpy and fucking doesn't like anybody, so was always yelling at like Dusa. So she's like, fucking like flies off screen.
Well, then you show up and you'll be like, hey, you're doing a great job today. Keep it up. And she's like,
and it fucking flies off screen.
Yeah, she's very funny. My pick was Skelly, the guy in the weapons chamber who you can test the weapons on, and so you can do combos and things and learn how each weapon works against him. And then he like turns the dust and he's like, you got me. And then he respawns and he's like, I'm just kidding. But
that's
you know,
funny
even
because there's a character like that in Sekiro too, I believe.
But with Skelly, it's like it's a long time before you start to realize that there actually is a story behind him. And even then you're sort of like, is he fucking with me? Or am I finally uncovering more about this character? And so
that's cool.
Kudos to the writers over there for Hades. I'm stoked for just like you guys for Hollow Knight, I'm stoked for Hades too. I think between Tears of the Kingdom and Baldur's Gate 3, the rest of my year game-wise is going to be pretty packed, and hopefully I can stick true to my guns and not buy any more games before next year and actually finish some stuff. But every game I've picked up is like 80 plus hours, and Tears of the Kingdom is no exception, and Baldur's Gate 3 is probably going to be that long too, at least. So if I only finish 3 or 4 games, it's because it was Persona 5. If I only finish like 3 or 4 games, it's because it was Persona 5, Tears of the Kingdom, and Baldur's Gate 3.
Hey, that's a pretty big feat in my book. But yeah, I think that we'll see more examples of cool NPCs as time goes on.
The Baldur's Gate game has a history of some pretty solid NPCs, so I'm excited for what we're going to get in 3. They've already announced like a fan favorite in Minsk and Boo being present. Nice. And, you know, there's going to be a whole slew of new characters and things like that. Yeah, it's NPCs that can make or break a game. Like, some games work better without any NPCs, like hardly at all. And then there are other games where the NPCs are what drive the game. It's those interactions with other characters that push the story forward or make it feel more personable. And
I mean, what's the major drive in something like Stardew Valley? It's seeing all the characters and getting to know them, and otherwise it's just a game of systems. So I think that you can take a lot of like mechanically driven titles, throw in some really nice NPCs, and suddenly it's a more enriching experience.
And for me, it's like that rivalry aspect, I think, is a fun way to push a story. And you mentioned Pokemon earlier. For me, it's actually Silver and Gold, the rival in that, has sort of this story of this this sort of like kid who seems to have come from some sort of troubled past, decides to steal a Pokemon and cares about power and is kind of a jerk to you, but is also kind of weirdly obsessed with you and wants to like beat you. And through that rivalry, you sort of see him grow up a little bit and sort of change his thought process a little bit. And then, of course, in Silver and Gold, you also see how Gary turned out from Red and Blue and how that rivalry played out and by the end.
I want to backtrack on something real quick. You mentioned Minsk and Boo as a character from Baldur's Gate. I didn't know who these people were. I Googled it. Turns out they're two characters, and it's a guy who throws a guinea pig.
It's
I'm assuming the guinea pig's name is Boo.
No, Boo is a giant space hamster miniature.
He's a miniature giant space hamster.
That order of words.
Oh, okay. But either way,
you should Google giant space hamsters too. This will start to make a bit more sense.
Minsk is a big, like, burly, dumb barbarian.
Yeah.
Minsk and Boo.
Mm-hmm.
And
I thought it was Miskin Boo, so I looked that up and I was like, well, this doesn't make any sense. And then finally I got a guy holding a guinea pig and I'm like, ain't no way. That's who it is.
He's a great character.
Yeah. And he
so
used to
lovely.
have big flamey red hair. Like
That's
big
so
luscious
fun.
locks of red hair.
I love that.
He's funny as shit.
He's so funny. It's one of the highlights of playing through the original Baldur's Gate games is that character. And so
That's
it's
so
fun
much
to
fun.
see him back.
I am kind of down for Baldur's Gate 3 now, having acquired this information and watching the Dungeons and Dragons movie, which is a lot of fun. Check it out. But yeah, I think characters in general can really drive like games and stories and movies and stuff like. And the fact that games have a lot of cool characters is really interesting. Like, I'm actually getting more out of Jedi Survivor now, the longer that I kind of watch it played, because there's so many little characters that are just cool from a Star Wars perspective. Like, the first time I laid eyes on this new bounty hunter called Kaj, I don't know. But I looked at her in the bar that you get as your like hub area, and I'm like, oh, she's got a cool story to tell. And I talked to her, and she didn't tell me anything. And I was like, all right, whatever. I guess that's nothing. And then come to find out, over time, she'll let you do bounties for her, and then it's like a whole quest line, and it results in some really, really cool fan service stuff.
That's cool.
And so, like, Marin is a great character in that game. She's a really cool, like, Dathomirian character. Grease, from Fallen Order, is a lot of fun as just, like, the old man who's kind of crotchety, but, like,
what's
still
the
very
new
heartwarming.
character that the turtle guy or something?
Oh, Turga or Turgle or whatever his name is?
Yeah.
He's funny. It's the voice of Invader Zim who plays it.
Oh, funny.
And so he's a weird little guy. I don't know, man. You put weird little guys in games and suddenly it's super fun.
I like that weird little guy.
Yeah.
But I think humor is also a pretty solid staple of a good NPC. But like beloved NPC is like Sully from the Uncharted game.
Mm-hmm.
He's funny. He makes me laugh. And he's one of my favorite characters, and which is why it's such a downer that Mark Wahlberg plays him in the movie, because Mark Wahlberg is not funny.
Right, yeah.
Like, it's a fine and fun adventure movie, but man, they really should have cast someone different in the role of Sully, because I just like that character a lot.
I mean, a Danny DeVito would have done better, in my opinion.
If they made an Uncharted movie where Danny DeVito was just every character, I'd watch it.
I mean, yeah, hands down.
There are so many things where if you just inject a chaotic amount of Danny DeVito, I'm suddenly on board. Like, you could be like, oh, it's a rom-com that's kind of like shooting for an Oscar. It's one of those. Also, it's played entirely by Danny DeVito. I'm like, well, you didn't have me until right now.
That's one of the reasons I got such a big kick out of Discord's like first TV trailer, where they were talking about all the stuff that they were expanding into, and it had Danny DeVito being like, the fuck is this?
Yep. What's a Discord? Hilarious.
Oh man.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun little characters, and I think that's kind of the base elements, right? Is it a character that you get more out of by interacting with? Is it a weird little guy? Is it a character that like you're building up this rapport with? Like, there's a lot of different ways to do NPCs, but these seem to be some of the connective tissue for it all.
So an example of one that kind of breaks the mold for a lot of it. It's not a modern title, like a 3D big thing, and it's not any of the things that I mentioned earlier, but still turns into a great NPC is Klaus from Mother 3.
Okay.
So you play as Lucas in the game and a variety of other characters. But Klaus, shortly after the tragic events of the beginning of the game, runs away. And it's that separation from like the fact that Klaus and Lucas experience the following the events of the beginning of the game in different ways. They take different paths and experience different things. And Klaus ends up becoming a major antagonist in the game, and it's heart-wrenching. Like, the Mother 3 is a tragic game, and it is a Game Boy Advance game.
And
it is a story that I have cried watching other people play it.
Oh, I believe it.
Like, it is a heart-wrenching, tragic story. It is driven by this like familial, brotherly love, and watching someone you love suffer and go through tragedy. And
we should absolutely put Mother 3 on the short list for games to cover.
I've got it loaded
Grand
up on
Electric
my
Archive.
Steam Deck. I've got it loaded up on my Steam Deck. It's ready to go. I've been playing so many other games.
I know.
Too many games.
Give me a reason to really dive into it, because we're gonna do Final Fantasy IX for that show, which is a big project because it's a huge game.
Yeah.
But I think Mother 3 should be maybe towards like the end of the year and for like a December title or something.
I'd be down for that. But man,
Put it on the
NPCs,
list.
they're pretty cool.
I like NPCs. Characters in general, I'm a big fan of.
You guys are a couple of my favorite NPCs in my life.
Oh, not even supporting characters.
I might be
Downgraded.
playable. You give me enough.
I mean, I don't play you guys. I play me. You're NPCs in my life. I'm the main character.
This first-person experience that we call life.
Right. Oh man.
And we have a rivalry, and you guys make me laugh, and you're in 3D.
And I'm a
all
weird
the things.
little guy.
I'm a weird little guy.
We've
Everything
solved the
you look
puzzle
for in an NPC.
Mm-hmm. Go find some of your own NPCs, friends. Get out there, meet some folks, or not. You know, you do you. You be the cool NPC in your life.
If you're listening to this and you have a favorite NPC and you want to share it, let us know and why. Like, we have our opinions on some of our favorites, and we barely scratched the surface. I didn't even mention all the ones I had written down, and that's after I deleted half the list.
But there's still a bunch of mine that aren't mentioned yet either. But yeah, we have a lot.
If you want to share your favorite NPCs on our social media, hit us up on Twitter at Forever Classic Games, or on a YouTube video, or join us in our Discord. We'd love to hear from you and share and have a discussion with everyone about your favorite NPCs, because I think it's a fascinating topic that is really reliant on writers, as I've mentioned many times throughout this thing, who are actively on strike right now.
Yep.
And absolutely deserve to be paid, because they are the ones that help drive all these characters and give us these amazing experiences that drive us to dedicate an entire episode to just talking about NPCs, because they were given just as much care as the main plot and characters. But thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us as we talked about these NPCs. And until next time, stay cool, play some games.